Oops. Wait. Oh no. What's up, everybody? Looks like Stephanie just fell off. Oh, there she is. Hold on.
Go.
Oh, there you go.
My apologies. I know what not to do now.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody to a special Rodeo Live. Today, my guest is Stephanie Vigil. She's a fellow gig worker in Colorado, and Stephanie is running for Colorado State House District 16, which is in Colorado Springs. I'm sorry, do you have a window open?
Do I have a window open?
Yeah,
I
like
don't
a tab
think
for
so.
YouTube? Because I'm hearing an
No.
echo.
Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second, actually. Okay, it's background noise. I'm sorry. I have a full house. And I unfortunately broke my foot a few weeks ago, so I am completely, so I have to kind of do everything from this little cozy spot. So my apologies.
Are you not hearing that?
I'm not hearing anything else in the background, no. Nope, I don't have anything else open.
Let me just see if I'm sorry.
Okay.
Is anybody in the chat? What's up, Roy? What's up, Gary? What's up, Crispy? Is anybody out in here hearing echo? No, is it? No.
I swear I'll figure this out. Yeah, I don't hear an echo, and I did not mean to leave your show again either. I don't know why it's so easy to scroll back like that.
See, I'm hearing the echo.
Yeah, now I'm hearing an echo as well. I have my mic on so I can talk to you, but I don't have anything else. Let me check my other audio settings and see if there's something I can silence.
Are you on a laptop or?
No, I'm on my phone because the camera's better.
You can still just disconnect the audio if you want. Like the StreamYard does a fairly good job at bringing in audio through the phone if it need be.
Okay. I mean, that's what I'm on. It's just that muted me. I don't know.
That's why I was wondering if you had a YouTube tab open.
Mm-mm.
Or another browser window or something, because it sounds like that's usually what's going on, is that somebody has a tab open.
Okay.
And it's playing from YouTube as well as.
Let me check all my other. I'm just going to see if anything is hanging out in the background that might. And I turned off any other media or anything. Are you still hearing something?
Yeah.
I really don't know. I mean, I just have my mic enabled to do this. I don't have anything else playing anywhere.
If you touch the settings in StreamYard, it should under audio there should be a checkbox for echo cancellation.
Ooh, there we go. Maybe that's it. Did that fix it? Do you hear anything else?
It'll take a second.
Okay. Thank you, because I'm not familiar with the StreamYard. This is my first time in this one. Still doing it?
No, it's still doing it. Yeah. It really does sound like another open tab, but I don't.
I mean,
I'm gonna try and see if I can't fix your. Oh wait, hold on.
Sorry to drop in. What it might be is she's got her mic hooked up, but the sound's coming through her phone.
Well, I just checkboxed echo cancellation for her, so maybe it wasn't still checked. Now maybe try it.
Okay. How's this?
No, what I'm saying is she might be getting the audio from her phone and it's hitting the headset since she's hooked up through the headset, but the audio, like the audio is coming through her mic back to us is what I'm thinking.
So yeah, maybe like best solution is just get rid of the whole headset altogether. You have to unplug it probably. You gotta unplug it.
Well, unplug it or go into her audio settings, and she might have to leave and come back now that she's removed it.
Sorry, everybody. This is sometimes what happens when you're live.
Oh, there she is.
Okay, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay. I don't know if now we have it fixed. Maybe
Maybe.
we still have the echo. I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know what to do about that. I can try it on my Chromebook and see how we work. I just try to use the thing that has better camera and sound usually, which tends to be my phone. Do you want me to come back in on my Chromebook?
Yeah, that might and don't have a headset or anything. That might work great.
Okay. All right. I will be right back.
That.
Sorry. I guess we should have tried this the other day. I don't think I was going to have so much issue. All right.
Okay. Yep.
So we need that banner that pops up at this point. Technical difficulties. Be right back.
Right. I'm looking for something to put up there.
Are you sure it's not your tab, Steve?
I got nothing open, but yeah, I'm still hearing it, huh?
I'm still hearing it. I think it's you.
It's not me though, dude. I got nothing. Okay, wait. You stay here. Let me re-enter.
Okay.
I don't know why that would help, but
Definitely can't be me because I was in the background muted. See, look, Steve always trying to blame somebody else. So once they get this technical difficulties out the way, if you got any questions, please type them into the chat. And then once they get past their initial, whatever they do, then he will go off of some of the questions in the chat. But please keep them clean.
test.
Isn't it supposed to be toast?
Toast.
Toast.
I'm not hearing it.
So it was you then.
But it wasn't me. I don't know what it was, man. I didn't do anything. So I don't know. Man, StreamYard crossed wires. I don't know.
Oh, no, I heard it right off the bat when she was here.
Yeah.
We'll see. Here she is.
Hi again.
This is the big test. Let's see.
This is the big test. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yeah. We think it was Steve, though. I'm not going to fit to you. We think it was Steve. So, all right, guys.
You never know.
So, let's try this again. Okay. So, welcome everybody to a special Rodeo Live. Today, my guest is Stephanie Vigil. She is a gig worker here in Colorado. Stephanie is running for a Colorado State House seat in District 16, which is Colorado Springs. Welcome, Stephanie.
Hi, thanks for having me. It is Vigil, by the way, just for future.
Oh, say it again.
Vigil. So like it looks like vigil. It means vigilant, but it's
okay.
I married into it. I used to say too.
Thank you. I would have never gotten that.
Yeah, no worries. So,
in fact, I'm surprised. I would be surprised if almost everybody doesn't get that wrong.
Most people do just once, unless they're, unless they grew up in a Hispanic and Spanish-speaking household. So,
right.
So yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that I heard when I was coming in and out of this room myself, real quick here. I think that I heard Gary kind of saying something. I just wanted to put out there first. I want to make it clear we are not here to debate politics. This is not a political channel. The discussion will primarily revolve around the future of app-based gig economy, but I'm sure that we probably might talk about this or that as well. But please post your questions in the chat. Gary is happy to help you rewrite them if you happen to misword, but please follow the YouTube guidelines, guys. You know what they are, so keep it clean. That's all I got to say. Other than that, I guess. So Stephanie, why on earth would you want to get into politics? I'm kidding. Let me.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
I know, but okay, go ahead.
Well, so I come from a pretty rough background as a child. I grew up in a very poor and a very toxic and abusive home. And so I had a lot of struggles in my early adulthood. I was disabled for a while. And when I went into long-term recovery after all of that, I just felt like someone like myself with my lived experience should, drop a seat at the table. And have every bit as much of a voice in our decision-making process as anybody else to make sure that everyone's needs are met. That's as radical as I'm going to get probably for this is, include everyone in the decision-making process. So, and that actually went hand in hand with my decision to go into more gig-based work too, because when I was still disabled, I started to pick up a little work here and there. I did some nannying, some baking jobs. I'm a baker as well. And the app-based gig economy was also becoming more available at the time. And so I got into that as well. And it's kind of stuck with me ever since as a way to, make ends meet, but not be tied down to one job.
Right. And that's like something we talk about here a lot is independent contractorship and being able to keep that status. And I'm not saying that from a gig worker standpoint. I could be, but I do think a lot of gig workers don't fully understand what independent contractor means. And I don't mean that as a slam. I just mean that it's more of a hybrid model. And I've seen this being suggested a little bit lately. But I work in the traditional IC world as well. I've worked for a penny press machine company that does a lot of the Colorado Springs locations too, like Garden of the Gods and all this, where you put the dollar in and you pick one of the 4 options and you crush a penny. So I've worked for this company. I've worked for a laser company since the late 90s. And yeah, it's I need to be able to keep all those ways of earning and have gig economy. And I can't have that limited. Like I can't, that's not, no matter what, I would always take the other side against that because I can't lose that. I need the full ability to earn how I earn.
Sure. So you mean as far as like becoming a hired employee, for instance?
Right. Or a franchise model or something along those lines that would completely change what the gig economy was ever meant to be. Sure. And I guess, we can all say like, yeah, it was meant to be something, but man, it got real dirty real quick. Well, I mean, yeah, it did. And that's because there's corporate greed, but there's political greed. Greed's kind of something that's everywhere,
Yeah, I think as a general rule, you can always follow the money if it looks like somebody's being taken advantage of and find out who's making off with it, right? So that's true whether we're talking about public or private sector. So, and I'm right there with you. I don't favor an employed model, and this is something I've run into with some activist groups and organizations that I'm allied with in my political work, where they said, well, what are you going to do to end the misclassification? I said, well, misclassification of whom, and I think maybe there are some folks out there who, if they haven't worked in the gig economy, if they're not familiar with it, they might be tempted to think that our greatest wish is to get out of it and be employed and be hired and have like a regular, 9 to 5, 40-hour a week job. And I've taken it as a point of pride to be one of the few people in my political lane who go, no, maybe you should listen to us, actually, like bring actual gig workers to the conversation here, because you might be surprised what we all actually want.
Well, and I guess that's a good thing to talk about next is, what do you think we all want? I've been doing this since 2014. I talked, because of Para and other outlets and whatnot, I've talked to drivers all over the country for years and years and years and years through the audio podcast, YouTube channel, through my website. So I'm curious to see what you think gig workers want.
Yeah. Well, what I have discovered, and again, we're not a monolith, right? Because you've talked to all kinds of people. You've probably heard the full spectrum of feedback as well. Mm-hmm. I think the big things for us at this point are for the system to work the way that it claims it will work, so that we know what to expect, for us to have a say in the system, and for the information that's available to us on the app to be accessible to us, to not have information hidden, to not have our data used against us. And to have like a fair, real world opportunity to maximize our earnings, right? If you work for yourself, you work for yourself. And if that's the way it's supposed to be, then the app companies can't just go trying to have their cake and eat it too, where they want us to operate as if we work for them, but not, obviously we still have our own cars, our own devices. So the information that's provided to us to make decisions about our own work needs to be accurate and transparent. And that's, I think, the big struggle, is who's allowed to access that data and who isn't.
That absolutely is the big struggle. First of all, there's already, I talk about this on the channel all the time. There's already data sharing between all these platforms anyway. So if you get deactivated for some, in rideshare for either of the giants, Lyft or Uber, and some woman accused you of touching her, you will immediately be deactivated within like an hour from Lyft as well, because they share that data. Do they like sharing with each other? No, but they do. Shared data is one of the things that when you click I agree when using this app, you're clicking away those rights. I've had legal rideshare on here. Spoke to them a few times about this, but I guess I need to ask, because right before we came on, I asked you this, and to my surprise, I thought you weren't for unions, but I thought because there's I don't know if you've heard of these two. They're being suggested as, like, in the last week or so in the news, as like hybrid models, which is something I've talked about for a long time with these companies, to provide a hybrid model of independent contractorship, whatever that might look like, instead of all this, back and forth. But before you even tell us your view on a union, I want to ask you something first. If the companies showed 100% transparency, so let's take rideshare, okay? They show where you're picking up, who you're picking up, where they're going, total distance, and they can show you a route and what they think that time looks like, but you might know better. It's up to you. The total pay, everything up front, 100% transparent. Is there then any claim to argue with these companies if they did that? Because then I have to say, then they are a business choosing to charge how they wish and making offers to independent contractors, which is a way of making offers to ICs.
Sure. And I'm fine with that. That would be a huge step in the right direction if they would meet that basic requirement that they're required to meet, right? That they show us the full information. The only other caveat to that I would still include is that I am not super comfortable with the way that they use the data they get back from us. And that would still be the one issue that I would still hold with them, is that our ability to give feedback to the system is hampered by how they use it. So for instance, I've talked to a number of individuals about this who didn't, oftentimes they don't know what's happening, of course, if they don't work in the industry as we do, that, suddenly one day on DoorDash, when you go to get an offer that's an apartment, the apartment number is not showing anymore. And they don't show it until after you've picked up the order. So if you don't know for sure that it's an apartment building or an apartment complex, you might take it when you prefer not to have orders like that. Because they're still high. So, and again, it's that like, well, isn't that full enough information? Well, it depends on how they decided that little bit should not be shown, or it depends on how
I'm talking about if everything was shown. Doesn't matter which app. Okay. I'm talking about everything.
Yeah.
Shown. Is there even a fight left, though? Because at that point, you'd be fighting the system of business being allowed to conduct itself.
Sure. Oh, I wouldn't necessarily like fighting the people.
No, I'm just wondering, because to me, that's what us at Para, even if some of us differ in some ways on our opinions, where we do come together is, 100% transparency solves every problem we have. End of story. Because that's all. Because at that point, if it's just all junk, don't take it. Move on to the next gig.
Sure. And yeah, and on the legal side, I would say that does cover the bases. And then, we could have a whole other conversation that would be a little outside of the point where we all come to that agreement, which would be that the future of work, generally speaking, means that as we go into more tech-based work, more app-based work, that ordinary working folks are probably going to want to find ways that we can wield that to our advantage, other than just as individuals. So that there's
already apps like that. There's like nursing apps where you can travel the country and just go plug into a network for 3 to 5 weeks if you want to go visit some family or something. Say you can go be a nurse in another state. Things that weren't pre-pandemic weren't even allowed.
Oh, sure. And I think I'm talking more about things like driver-owned cooperatives and things like that people are looking into, which I think should be a viable option. And the only thing that would stop that from happening is if, say, the app companies wanted to get involved in the regulatory mechanism to make it exceedingly expensive to do so that only people with a lot of capital startup could do it. That would be the only other hang up. And as far as so the group that I work with, it's Colorado Independent Drivers United. We are a totally non-traditional labor union, right? There's no shared workspace, there's not a collective bargaining contract, and we're not hired employees, so it is kind of a different angle at which to take it. And it's very much for those same purposes, right? The transparency, meeting their legal requirements under the TNC Act and other issues that we're having with them, and that's basically the end goal of this group. And apart from that, it's been a good community to kind of connect people with, how do you make the most of this as a job? If it's what you're doing for work, how do you maximize your own earnings? Because they certainly don't send out newsletters that effectively do that when you hear from the app companies themselves.
So, I mean, it's something I would look into just out of interest, but I'm not a closed-minded person on this, or I try not to be on anything, but I have had more than my share of experience and have my own very, very opinionated, views on unions.
Gotcha.
I think there is a time and a place for a few of them. I think for the most part, they don't belong, but, when you're talking about these cooperatives, usually at some point they lead down a road to unions. Is that something you personally think the gig economy needs is unions? Because
if something is employee owned, then it's it's going to be operating on a break-even model in any case. It wouldn't be a for-profit corporation. It would be that's exactly why they're going for the co-op model, is my understanding. And we don't have the capacity, I think, here to do it in Colorado right now. But I think it would be something that would be interesting to see as an alternative to the, to the corporate-owned app model. So it's not something I'm like I said, I do this part-time for a reason. It's so that I can, sounds like what you do, various kinds of work. And in my case, It's paid, some of it's not paid. And I would not be in a position to be a founding member of a co-op that's going to eat up 40 plus hours a week just on that one endeavor. But I think it would be an interesting thing to see. And I think as long as we're not prevented from doing so, I think it was probably something that's coming down the road regardless, because a number of drivers would like to do it.
Right.
And a number of local businesses as well would rather work with something smaller like that, or so they have indicated to me, that they're done trying to work with Uber and done trying to work with DoorDash, and they'd rather just contract individually with drivers. I thought, well, I'm not in a position to start that, but if somebody is, I'd love to see what it would take to have a smaller scale version of that business, like not a mom and pop delivery service, but something like that.
Yeah, I mean, they were, when AB 5 passed, they were threatened to leave in February after they gave them 30 days to start paying into that model before Prop 22 was even initiated. And they were told to pay by midnight. They said absolutely not, and demanded to get that proposal vote. And the state, it was like, the final minutes, literally. It was like 2 minutes before midnight or something when the state said, it would disrupt our public transit system. We have to let them stay. So, I mean, really, I don't know. I feel like why don't these companies just be 100% transparent? Because then it kind of solves the problems between us, or at least would make a lot of sense, because it's very few people I know who want any change of a regulation or a union. And I'm talking about like 95% of the drivers I talk to, of the hundreds I talked to, want that. It's literally 5% or less who truly want anything that's going to in any way enable a group to take some funding or be able to limit, and I know that's not the intention when they develop, but that sometimes is the road that they travel down, even if they don't mean to. is very much towards union dues. In fact, I don't know if you're familiar with Vina Dubal, but I had a very extensive conversation with Vina about a year ago. And she was talking to me. She was a big portion of the AB5 piece with Lorena Gonzalez and Gavin Newsom, and just really kind of couldn't sell me on the perks. And it worries me because I gotta ask you this. So you're in District 16, which is Colorado Springs.
Yeah.
And I'm just asking, aren't you very much against the wall? I mean, I'm just asking because I live in Denver, and for those that don't know our area, Colorado Springs, Denver is very all over the map politically, but Colorado Springs seems very to the right to me.
It's not as much as you might think. It's a mixed bag. And the certainly the portion of town where my district is far more center to center left than the county at large, or Colorado Springs even at large. And the city's changed an awful lot over the years. It's grown a lot. It's diversified a lot. A lot of our voting habits have changed. We are about to, at last, legalize recreational cannabis here, right? Like one of the last metro areas that where it's not permitted. It's just, there's actually the bigger disconnect is between how the citizenry at large feels about things and operates in the city, as opposed to how the government actually operates. Because our city council and whatnot is not always the most responsive. So it's kind of hard to tell at a distance, but it is very much different here on the ground than it's been in ages. And I've lived here 16 years altogether.
Okay.
So,
yeah, I've been out in I'm originally from Michigan, but I've been out here about 26 years now. So
okay, where are you from in Michigan?
East Lansing area.
Oh, okay. I'm from very southeast, like practically Toledo, Ohio, but Monroe, Michigan was where I was born and raised initially.
Downriver from Detroit.
Yes, exactly.
I know where you are.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to I want to jump over to the comments and see if I want to see what Gary has starred over here. Maybe we got some
And I want to apologize during the lull here for my video. I don't know why it froze. I tried to see if I could close it, but it's nothing seems to be working. I don't know if I'm still frozen on your end, but
the picture is, but the audio is great. So
okay.
I think we're good. So I'm gonna, Gary's in here starring some comments. So you guys keep the comments coming in, please. I guess some of these are going to be what they are, and I guess we'll see where, if you feel like answering them, go ahead. No harm, no foul. We got Gary sniping in there, you guys. So, but I'll put a couple up on the screen that you can see. And so, can you see this?
Yeah, I can see.
Okay. So first question, I guess it needs to be reworded here, Roy, but will you be running on the Green Deal?
Green Deal.
Is she comfortable putting gig workers and others out of work? So I think he's talking about energy sustainability, going electric.
Okay. I do support our greenhouse gas reduction roadmap in Colorado, and I think to the extent possible, we should be meeting those goals and beating them when our capacity allows for it. I think I'm not sure what the through line there would be for as far as putting gig workers and others out of work. We do have a transition to make from fossil-based energy fuels to renewable energy. And it's hard. It's always going to be hard to do that without somebody taking a hit. I do appreciate that we have an Office of Just Transition in the state, and I think it should get more funding to ensure that nobody in a coal or natural gas based community is being left behind in the transition. Everybody gets what they need to adapt to the world changing. I mean, we're all part of a kind of a new tech form of work ourselves, right? It certainly altered how other people have worked, and decades before until now, and we're going to continue to change. So I think facilitating that change so that people have cushion to land on and the resources they need is more important than digging in our heels.
Okay, so I guess with this, I do want to say that, I've even said, hey, is it going to come down to needing legislation? So that we've seen lots of different states do different models. We've seen, people view it different, but we've seen what I call a complete fail in California across the board, because when I talk about this, AB5 killed lives. I'm not talking about the gig economy. It destroyed people that I know, took out nonprofits. We've talked about this ad nauseum, so I won't get into it today. But what Massachusetts is moving to is very, very, very heavy, and not allowing the type vote. DC, but Roy brings up a good question here. Do you see needing legislation?
So, okay, yeah. So here's what I will say is that it depends. It depends on what it is. Adding more restrictions on. I mean, it would depend on what it is, and who it benefits. I will say the gig companies are pulling out all the stops to influence government to their liking, right? Instacart and DoorDash have put huge amounts of money into the alcohol delivery, for instance. They have a lobbying group now that's all run by their industry to influence state governments for what they want, right? And they're free to do that. That's how the system works. But I do want.
It's called the Flex Association.
Yeah, Flex Association. Yes, thank you. And that's industry run. That's not driver run. And sometimes, frequently we can have mutually beneficial relationships with the app companies. Sometimes we are not on the same page and their interests are against ours. And so anytime that we have, and this is a major ethic for me, nothing about us without us. That's where I always land. So if we're going to change anything in the law around the gig economy, gig workers ourselves need to be there to say what we want. To the extent that, like I said, my Drivers United group interacts with the government at all. Like so far, that's been the extent of it. That's kind of the name of the game, is to get people to comment and give testimony on relevant bills to make sure that the driver's side of the story is being heard and not just what the app companies want.
Right, which kind of rolls into the next question. I know a lot are from Roy here today. I see that Gary's picking out some other ones too, but so yeah, do you feel, how do you feel about government involvement in private businesses?
Well, I mean, we always do to some extent, right? We have to protect ordinary working folks. We know we have a minimum wage, we have workplace safety protections. Certainly they can miss the mark or be irrelevant or be unnecessary.
Maybe he's relating this just to independent contractorship.
Yeah, well, I mean, even though it's a private business,
right.
But sure,
it's also a different path chosen.
Yeah, it is, and on some level, we have to recognize that a privately owned business that's running on thousands of other people's cars and labor and insurance plans and devices and all of that, like there is a public component to it at a certain point. For instance, we did have a bill passed in the legislature. I think it was just this year, maybe it was last year, making sure that if you have an accident with an uninsured motorist, that you're still taken care of as a gig worker, because that's something that ends up being out of your control. And hopefully we're prepared for those things, but it's just not possible for everyone to be. And ordinarily, when you have an accident with an uninsured motorist on the job, someone's got to be responsible for that. So we've got gaps to fill. Usually, in an ideal world, everything's 100% a free market decision, and there's no need to involve any rulemaking or other public policy. But to shore up some of those gaps, we do have to involve ourselves sometimes.
Right. Yeah. I'm these are, I'm looking at these, and some of these, I'm pretty much like, I'm looking at this from Aaron. Okay. Aaron's up in Alaska and he's asking opinions on fracking. My guess is she's not for it. But,
not particularly.
I mean, I think that's just some of these are just a pretty much given, I'm thinking, but if we that's the kind of thing, I don't think we need to go down that road unless you are for it.
Right. Well, as I said earlier, I favor I think our roadmap to renewable energy is a pretty good one. It also puts us it certainly makes us a national leader in clean energy development and carbon reduction. And we should continue that path. If we can amp up our if we can ramp up our renewable energy development to the point that we have more capacity and we can decarbonize even more quickly, then so much the better. The fracking is, I think, an especially hazardous means of extraction that causes a lot of environmental damage and water contamination. And if we can find, and I think we can find, a cleaner and safer way of energy, then there's no need for us to be doing that, except that somebody wants to use it to get wealthier, right? We talked about the putting limits on what people can do with their greed.
Sure.
Yeah.
But so again, he's saying that he running on the green. I don't think she's running on it. I think that's just something she's for.
It is. I mean, it is a major value of mine. I think.
Of course it is. But
Yeah.
I don't know if is that how you would term it, running on the green energy platform.
Green energy platform. I mean, certainly environmental protection and acting on climate change. Yes, and that's certainly part of it. But we come back to green energy a lot. I think in these conversations, there are also a host of other ways that we are contributing to carbon emissions, and some of that is also construction, how we build homes, how we rehab homes when we do reconstruction as well. Transportation, besides just what we put in our cars, also how we build our communities is a huge component for that. So, he says, what is it? Take on increase on gas prices, and because
this is a big deal to everybody.
It is.
I mean, this is huge.
Well, the gas prices have been brutal, and the thing about it is, there's a short-term solution where we could just continue to kick the can down the road as far as renewable energy development, just to keep prices lower in the short term. But at the end of the day, the oil company is taking as much from us as they possibly can. And fossil fuels are necessarily a volatile market that they tend toward price increases. And it's going to just keep getting more and more expensive. Like the best possible scenario for us to keep using fossil fuels is that someday we'll run out, and hopefully we won't run out before we've damaged the environment to the point we can't live on the planet anymore, right? So at some point the change has to happen. So
yeah, I mean, one thing I'll say about the Green Deal, of course, who wouldn't want that? I think it's the price tag that comes with it and what it can really do. Again, you could say any price tag is worth saving the planet. Well, it's the price tag that comes with it, and what countries are not doing it at all. I mean, North Korea, for example, I don't want to get in this way, but they just shoot nuclear missiles into the ocean. I mean, let's get real. I mean, they don't. I won't name any other countries because I don't want to break any YouTube rules here, but sure. a lot of places just do what they want. They don't care.
Sure. Well, I think we want to lead the way is the idea, right? I mean, that's how I feel about it. I have a certain love of country where I want us to, sure. I don't want to just go around beating my chest and saying we're number one. I actually want us to be our best and be international leaders. And I feel very much that way about Colorado as a state as well. I like for us to be a national leader, whether it's in voting rights or environmental action or civil liberties of other kinds. So you mentioned the price tag, and I'm right there with you. But I think also what's the price tag of continuing what we're doing? That's not free of cost either. The destruction that we're dealing with, the pollution that we're dealing with. Everything comes with a cost eventually.
Right. I just it's you got to get everybody on board.
Sure.
This isn't an option. This is if you're going to do this, everybody has to be on board, and not everybody's on board.
Yeah, well,
that's not even close. And I know you're saying that it takes somebody to lead that, but really it's almost like everybody to make that happen, everybody has to be on board fully, or else it's. And plus, people could start playing that as a value against each other if everybody wasn't fully involved. Well, they're not involved, so I'm going to get out, and it would, bribes, bad money. I mean, we all know where things can go, but I hear you that. If that's the kind of change that people want to see, has to start somewhere. I just question the amount and the price tags and where the money goes. And because of the factors involved, is it all well spent? Again, is saving the planet well spent? Sure. Is it do we know that it's doing it? I think there's a good and bad. I think there's a lot of sides on this.
Sure. Well, it certainly isn't saving the planet for us to give more and more and more of our income to the fossil fuel industry so they can make, artificially inflate the prices of fuels like they've been doing, right? And they've had like record profits this year, the big oil companies. I mean, just astonishing quantities of money. So that's where our money is going, right? If we took even a fraction of it and put it into development that liberates us from that fossil fuel dependency, then we'd be in a much better position.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but I feel like we're in that fossil fuel position. I mean, like, there's a lot of people not ready to do it. You don't have to be into conspiracy theories to know that it's not a joke about these battery meltdowns. The fully electric cars are great. They're expensive. They do have big issues. A battery meltdown can cost the same as a new car, period.
Sure.
It's like there's a long way to go.
Yeah.
So when I hear, at least hear you say things like, it's going to be a while. I like that because I hate fake deadlines. Like by, California's nuclear about these, like by 2025, everybody will be electric or else, we'll destroy your car.
Well, sometimes too, I think in order to get something done, you kind of have to draw a line somewhere and just say, let's do it by this date. And, sometimes I'll catch some heat for this too, because I believe in throwing the date out farther, right? Throw it out to a point where we know we can comfortably achieve it by then. We did that here in Colorado Springs with closing a coal burning power plant in downtown Colorado Springs, Martin Drake, right? They put the closure date out to 2040. And then they said like, well, yeah, maybe actually we can do it by 2035. And lo and behold, it's done as of this year. We're no longer burning coal in downtown Colorado Springs. So we started with a date that was very easily achievable, which I think is where a lot of our climate goals are in Colorado right now. And as our capacity improves and as we get buy-in from everybody who's, all the stakeholders who need to be consulted, then we can start to move up the date. But right now it's set at a point that's comfortably achievable.
Yeah.
As comfortable as it can be. Right?
Well, I don't know where our target is. I hate moving targets. I'll use something that has moved too often that this doesn't get political. It just gets to a shareholder waste of money. I'll use autonomous with Uber. There are other companies that are way better than Uber. Uber has got rid of their autonomous division 3 or 4 times and had it pedaled back to them. So, they time and time again, they said full autonomous by 2019, by 2020, by 2022, by 2023. They are just, there's so, like I've talked to autonomous engineers, other people's, and the timeline isn't even close to what that moving target is. So a lot of times it is just for PR and just to move it forward a year every time.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well,
that's just being honest. So
yeah, no, and that's how. But that is kind of how the nature of public relations goes, right? You have to give people something to work for. So
I wish the media was a little bit better about being like, hey, there's that moving date again, because I know and I understand it. I understand they have affiliations with people and this and that and the other, but so the gig hybrid model, as I understand it anyway, it's not a thing yet. It's a way they're trying to get together to have, because some stuff came up about it was born from the PRO Act, even though the PRO Act is fairly dismantled at this point, but it was bred from there that all gig workers need to, that the pandemic proved that we all needed to be have medical benefits and this and that and the other. And again, if something like that happens, it doesn't matter how it's worded. And I'm not saying anything about the sides here, but again, if that happens, what it is just they always are coming at it different ways to call you an employee.
Right.
And they would love that. So
yeah, and that's the tricky part, because I don't think, and I think we're on the same page about this. We don't want to be hired. We don't want to be hired by the app company. If we wanted to be hired, we could go get a hired job. There's no shortage of them right now. That's not what we're after. And I think this is actually yet another good reason to separate medical benefits from employment and make them more publicly available. Because if we're going to say that you're supposed to get it from work and everybody's supposed to get, their paid leave and supposed to get their medical insurance and supposed to, et cetera, from their employer, then that means you kind of just can't have those things unless you're employed. And that's, if you don't wish to be employed by a single employer and you'd like to work for yourself off a variety of jobs, you should be free to do that. And it makes us more free when we preserve those options. So no, I'm not crazy about the hybrid model. I would have to see, the devil's always in the details, right? I would need to see more about how that would be implemented to say for sure whether or not I would, go along with it at all. And obviously it's going to, what I'm able to do at the state level is very different than what happens at the federal level. And I'm somewhat dependent on how those decisions pan out. But I think the bigger picture is, as we've discussed here, how do we ensure that the existing independent contract law protects people in our position from being getting the runaround from our app companies? Because the concept of an independent contractor that we're working off of still has its roots in, say, I'm going to design a website for you, or I'm going to, install a new sink or something in your bathroom, do a kitchen remodel, that kind of like, here's the job, I have a contract for it, I do it for you, you pay me. But we have a very rapid and higher tech version of that, in which like every offer that comes in is a new contract essentially. And how are we supposed to ensure that our rights are being respected in that contract if the technology gets away from us so quickly? So that's why it comes down to the transparency. Like every time it comes down to the transparency and respecting our autonomy as independent drivers.
Sure. I agree with the transparency 100%. I think that is a must, because when I mentioned being in other arenas of independent contracting, I'm never told you're going to be paid this much and there might be this much more. In no part of my world does that work, except for the gig apps. So
right, yeah.
When I do a job, I know what the pay is. I know if it's hourly, what the day rate is, period. That's why I was saying earlier on, if you saw it all up front, I got nothing to argue with. I don't care about their algorithm. I don't care what they're I do, because it could affect my tips, but I am a person who would realize, wait, I'm not getting the tips I'm out of here. I don't. And that, I guess, leaves me with the Driven Dad here had a question about why not just start a company versus a union. I'm trying to bring myself back to that part of the conversation, but
sure. Well, and that's the thing. I think there are actually some gig drivers out there who would like to start their own company, like just start their own, driver owned and run cooperative. It'd be less of a corporate model than we're dealing with DoorDash and et cetera. But if they want to do that, they should be able to. I would say that there's a certain level of government intervention that would prevent them from doing that I would think small government folks would not appreciate. There's certainly regulatory capture that goes on at all levels of government in this country, where regulations are specifically tailored to benefit people who already get what they want out of that industry. Such as having a licensing process or something that's so prohibitively expensive and complicated that basically the only people who can fulfill it are the companies that already exist. So that's not fair to people who want to do a startup, right? Tony Hsiu had a startup one day. Why can't somebody else have a startup and compete in that market with him? So I think as long as we keep it competitive, truly competitive in that way, then we're in good shape. And yeah, some people should start a company. If they want to.
Yeah, if you have the ability. Yeah. I mean, there's people, the Driven Dad who I just mentioned here, who had that question, he rents a Tesla, but not from an Uber or Hertz program. He rents it from a place that is privately owned, which you can do gig work in it or anything. It's completely commercial insured, so he can conduct any business he wants in it. He does that on a weekly basis, and it's worked out well for him. So, I mean, that's
super cool. I love that. Yeah. We should, I think, and maybe this will lead into, Driven Dad's other question about, taxpayer funding for government financial incentives to make green companies. Maybe it's not that much different. But the reality is when it comes to energy, transportation, anything that's on the grid, we know we're always using taxpayer funding to encourage this particular kind of system, because those things just aren't run on an individual basis, right? Even when I drive my private car, I have to drive it down a public road. And even when I, turn on my lights that I individually paid for, they only work because I'm on the grid. So if we're dealing with things that work in, whole systems across, broad and diverse populations, of course, we're using taxpayer funding to incentivize one way of doing it over another. So I would rather we incentivize a way of generating and distributing our energy that is friendlier to the planet and keeps our air and water free of pollutants for our own health. So if that's if that was supposed to be isn't that hypocritical? I think it's only hypocritical if we're trying to say that government shouldn't be involved, and I wouldn't argue that in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is government's involved in everything. So I mean, you almost can't say that. Period. You just
sure. Well, and as we've discussed, the app companies certainly want to be there. Right. I mean, they certainly have their ways that they want to be involved in government action. They want to influence the law and the budget and they're going to do that. Human nature abhors a power vacuum. So if they're going to be there, we got to be there.
So what do you think about this? Is this a question? I know we talked about it, but is this a question that you can answer or?
So, okay. So I only loosely and it's necessarily a very surface level answer. So I apologize. I'm going to do the best I can with it. I have not dug into say like the paperwork, the founding documents, everything that you would need to make that happen. But there is room in the law in Colorado for nonprofit organizations to form a cooperative so that they can do more financial transactions and distribute money in a way that's legal and transparent and has some governance to it. And so something like that, I think, would necessarily be a not-for-profit cooperative where everybody who works just gets paid for the work that they do, or they get paid their share of it according to an agreement that they have. So, just the same that you would with, say, like an agricultural cooperative, like for small farmers and that sort of thing. They don't turn a profit. They're not going to be publicly traded. They're not, but everybody who is involved gets what they went there for. If that makes a little bit more sense, and I hope it does.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm again, a lot of what you say makes sense to me, but on a lot of the way that it's looked at, I always tell people, I never tell people, I am an independent voter through and through, and I am a true one and have been for many, many years.
Nice.
Politics matter to me a lot. I don't ever let my view on anything be known. There's some stuff that I understand that you're saying, but I don't want people thinking I'm the opposite way either. I don't see eye to eye on all of it. I'm definitely not sure about, I think that this kind of stuff, I've known a lot of people in a lot of these type, the Gig Workers Collective, this down in LA and the ones in Texas, and it always leads to even like ones that in the beginning I didn't believe did, in one way or another, it led down the path to the PRO Act eventually. And to me, that was like so destructive to this country that there's no way a PRO Act can exist in this country.
Okay.
We have 59 million independent contractors / self-employment. So I mean, like a third of the workforce is that.
Well, and see, and this is what makes it so complicated moving forward. I don't think that necessarily the pro worker movements of the past are going to be. You can't just cleanly resurrect them in today's environment and do the same things and have it work. Like I don't know if it was you and I before another conversation I was having recently, where I was like, well, yeah, you can't just do a work stoppage for independent contract work to like you would a strike at a single work site, right? So like, certainly if people are being, mistreated, not getting paid what they're worth and all that, and they have like an agreement for a work stoppage, for a strike at a single location, then the leverage actually works, because you can deny the offending company the thing they need, your labor, in order to function. We don't have that in this kind of, it just doesn't make sense. So, I think the the trick moving forward here is going to be, how do we move into the future of work in a way that doesn't harm people who work for a living or take them for a ride or exploit them? Because there is a growing gap between people who work for a living and non-laboring investor class types. And if they keep getting more and more wealth and they don't have to earn it, what are we toiling for is kind of the end all be all of it. And that doesn't mean that we can function the way that Granddad's union did, but we have to come up with something. And maybe it's not the right terminology for it, but it's how we've been organizing ourselves for now. And in the meantime, we're going to keep coming back to that transparency. I don't think there's any disagreement there. They should say, they should tell us what they are obligated to tell us. It's like literally the one thing they do. This is what I find myself yelling at my app about half the time when it's frozen. It's like, literally, this is all you do. You don't make the food. You don't deliver the food. You just run the app, make it work. That's your one thing.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I like having guests on who view things differently, because I don't think it to be wrong. I don't think myself to be right. I don't think that if these conversations don't exist, people aren't learning. Because if you just go to a conversation that you want to hear, what's the point?
Yeah.
Somebody's just cheering on your beliefs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really big on leaning into curiosity over certainty. I always want to know more. We always want to bring in more voices. We want to rigorously debate everything. It's very important. We want to get it right. So I would rather be wrong for a while until I know for sure. Right.
Well said. Yes. So this is important because this is a big deal right now. This is a huge deal. I mean, this is like the gig workers are seeing violence in the ways that the taxis used to in the 80s. So thoughts on this? And maybe it's not even government or what, but what are your thoughts on that?
Sure. Well, and this actually ties back so much to having a voice in the system when it comes to the app platform, right? Because right now, like you were talking about earlier, somebody makes a complaint about you and you get deactivated. What's your recourse for that? Without being employed. Because if you're employed, there's a procedure for complaints that you can have. Since we aren't, we're just relying on contract law, and somehow the app company's agreement with the state does not compel them to give us some kind of process by which we can appeal a decision, get reinstated, get compensation if we've been wrong. We don't have that. So that does need to be incorporated somehow. And that's going to be tricky because, again, it's independent contract work, but it's not out of the question, right? Certainly, like, day laborers have a right to safety and temp workers have a right to safety, and to some extent. There's, I think, some good allyship for this in home care workers who routinely have issues with not being safe at work since they go into other people's homes. And if they have an issue with a boss, they don't have anywhere else to go about it, right? Like, so that is definitely something that can be addressed in contract law, and it should be the case for all workers. I think, we're talking about not having any recourse for if you're harmed. My God, like that should be something that the app company is responsible for. Whether they hire us or not, I don't want them to, but even as non-hired, they are still dependent on our labor to earn a profit. They're still running on our work. So our safety has to be a priority. That's not too much to ask of them.
And I got to say too, because I know this is something else we'll agree on, and there probably will be some people in the chat who won't agree with me or you on this one, but maybe not. But there's I just lost my place. I'm so sorry.
You're good.
I got thrown off by a comment here. I'll come back to it. But here is something that I was thrown off by for a second. So do you think that there is a wage gap? And I'll come back to this. I gotta just regain my thought here.
Yeah, I do not have enough information to answer that. I'm not sure. If you driven mom on here,
she lives in down in near Parkerish.
Okay.
Denver.
I can certainly I would love to hear anything that you have seen or heard that would suggest that, because I want to know if that is the case. To my knowledge, it is not, but I don't know that. And I'd love to hear about it. info@stephanievigil.com. Drop me an email. I don't know. Do you have any insight on that, Steve? I haven't heard this.
Well, I know that she just recently did a roundtable with all women workers in the gig economy. I'm not sure what exact findings were, but I think for her own investigative reasons, she might believe that there is. I don't know.
Interesting.
But I'm again, the way these algorithms work, it wouldn't really. Oh, which reminds me, that was the thing.
Gotcha.
Remembered it. Part of the problem here is the fact that never in the history of Uber or any of them, and I know the delivery apps don't really do much anyway to carry the correct insurance, but even when it was commercial insurance, full commercial insurance, before it came up with the smaller commercial insurance for gig workers, you have always been told you need to carry the correct insurance by all of the apps. However, the apps make you upload the proper insurance. However, we already know 90+% don't upload the correct insurance. They're just uploading insurance. So most drivers, 9 out of 10 drivers, do not carry the correct insurance to do what they're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a disconnect that should be solved. That I was saying, I know we probably won't have any disagreement here, because in fact, I would wonder who would have disagreement in this. They should, and especially now, before I understand, because Uber and Lyft came around, nobody knew it was happening, and all you could get was the $5,000 a year commercial policy that was like 110 million things you don't need, and then you needed like these two parts. Right. They've since done it so the increase is minor, and you can get it through many companies. There was a time, I remember, even when people were scared to call and ask about it because they thought, my insurance can get pissed. They're gonna.
Right. Yeah. And I hate sometimes that it's like that, where we're afraid to say what's really going on for fear it's going to blow up in our face. Right. So I alluded earlier to the Office of Just Transition in the Department of Employment. Right. There are a few other divisions within CDLE. Department of Future of Work, which is one of them, New Americans, or a few others. I really would like us to use those more to get workers the resources they need to meet these goals, right? Because like you said, 9 out of 10, that's not great. That's not like a small number of people not getting the memo. That's a lot of people either willfully or unintentionally putting themselves and others at risk. And if we're going to have a robust gig economy, it needs to be supported by the state, and that those communications, that would be a great thing for that office to take on. Like having a go-to hub for people who work in the gig economy to make sure that they are checking all the legal boxes, that they have everything they need, that they understand what their rights are. That would be kind of the public side of transparency, is to have an accurate public page available to people. And that's something I would be willing to look into.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think that, I think we've covered a lot of this. I think that at this point it would get very political. I think that's about the only thing left to run its course. If anybody does have a last question, please put it in here before we wrap this up, because I think Stephanie has been a great guest. Again, we'd love having people. You can't get anywhere without difference of opinion, guys. And it's not like we differ on everything. There were some things we agree on. I actually like hearing the other side's opinion, because sometimes it just, clarifies some light, maybe to where you're still not going to change your mind, but okay, I understand it more now. Right. And I don't know about other people, but that helps me sometimes just to even be able to say that.
Sure. And I would say to everyone in the comments we weren't able to get to, do please, it's just stephanievigil.com is my website, and there's a comment form, and you can email me, call me. I'm very accessible. That the phone number there comes straight to me.
Right. Looks like we just there was a couple of last comments. So Driven Mom here. We could take
a larger caretaker role could affect our ability to drive during busy times. That isn't a true wage. A larger caretaker role. Oh, sure. Yeah, no, I think what she's referring to here, and I think is so much bigger than anything I could pass a bill on, is just the societal norm that women, generally speaking, we take on a lot of unpaid work in the form of domestic and caregiving work, and that does take away from our ability to be doing paid time. And that's a hard one to work around, because the market in which we earn money doesn't necessarily measure the kinds of work that we do at home to care for our loved ones, to care for our home, to cook meals, to raise kids, right? And so if those things are falling to women, that's necessarily kind of pulling us away from earning opportunities.
So obviously, blanketly, this is not a comment you agree with, but how do you address this one?
The government tends to want their cut in everything. I would just push back on that. What is their cut? Because when we're talking about our government, that's our cut. That's ours. When we spend money, it's a matter of who it supports, right? I think when we spend public money on things that benefit everyone in the public, then that's money well spent. Certainly, we fund public parks, we fund libraries, we fund public infrastructure for transit, and all manner of other things that we need. I don't know that the government getting involved always makes everything worse for the average person. I can think of some times when it certainly does, and I'd be inclined to agree with you, but I'm not probably. I would push back against that blanket statement, because frequently we need government involved to stop people from being hurt.
My guess, Tony, is for money. Is that right?
Say what? Oh, for money? Why do I gig, and what gigs? Oh, and this might have been at the very beginning when you weren't on yet. So I will say, so I do delivery. I do DoorDash, Grubhub, Uber Eats. I did Instacart for a while. I was not an Instacart fan, to be honest. And in the past, I also did all kinds of other odd jobs, right? I had a cookie business for a while. I'd provide nanny work and daycare and all kinds of things. So I
all for money.
All for money. And specifically because I had been disabled for a while in my earlier adulthood. And so when I started finding myself wanting to kind of ease back into work and felt like my health was in a good place to do so, that seemed to me the best option, was to take on independent contract work and work when I wanted to and back off when I didn't, and buy myself that flexibility. And I think it's a wonderful thing to be available for those of us who want it, and should absolutely be preserved that way.
Yeah. Okay. So I had to pull this up, but I'm kind of wondering. So to me, again, this is just me, Roy, but I would just prefer the transparency. Because I just don't think in the gig economy is a place for everybody to be pricing it out. But that's just because of the headache that the system wouldn't be able to control it. It could just make things way worse, but that's
but Roy makes an interesting point there, because I think that's for people who want to try an alternative that's driver owned and driver run, like that's what they would probably be going for. And as I said, there's a restaurant downtown here as well. I just kind of keep thinking back to him, because he's very good, strong libertarian streak. I just want to run my business. I don't want to deal with this these extra fees and regulations and all that. He's like, can't some of you who are tired of driving for Uber and DoorDash and all that, can't you just start like your own little independent driver business, and I'll pay you, right? Like, I'll actually just give you a lump sum to take all the deliveries for, and plus mileage. And, hey, you actually could probably get a handful of people to sit down and draw that up with you. You would probably want it to be like a cooperative of just downtown restaurants, for instance, who cooperate with just a handful of drivers. And yeah, you could probably do that. Again, as long as there's no industry-backed regulatory measure that would make it prohibitively expensive and cumbersome.
Yeah. I mean, okay, that's your answer, Roy. So, yeah, Chris, thank you very much. Thank you for joining. Thank you, everybody, for joining in, by the way. I'm just kind of coming through the end of these. This is a veteran gig worker here saying, giving you some good luck, saying good talk.
You're listening in.
Yeah. You see, I think that so let's see. Yeah, I think that I've got to all the questions today. I think that Gary, thank you for helping out. Thank you for pulling some into the starred column for us. everybody can thank Gary. If your question got asked or we pulled it up, it was because Gary picked you until the very end there. Otherwise, if he didn't pick your question, you can blame Gary. So,
and thank you, Gary. I appreciate it. It's sometimes when I've done some live streams just for the campaign, I find that it's almost impossible to do unless you've got a moderator to snag and funnel comments. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's we don't need it on every live we do, but I asked him to please be here today. Just you never know, and especially in the some trolls come in or something, and
sure,
just start making it about not about what we're talking about and get us way off track. So appreciate it. By the way, Stephanie's website is in the show notes. So if you feel like, especially if you're in Colorado, especially if you're in Colorado Springs, check out her website. But even if you're not and you're kind of interested, because it might give you some perspective on even what's going on in your area. I would think. I'm trying to make that a blanket because we have viewers from around the country. So trying to make it where, I'm trying to think how you'd say it. But I don't know if you're the first. I know you'd be the first in Colorado, but I don't know, maybe even the country if you did win, right? To be a gig worker
I'll certainly be the first gig worker elected to the Colorado State Legislature. I'm not sure how that looks around the country. That's a good question. Right. It's a relatively new way to work, and at some point or another, somebody has to be the first person who gets into a public position where we can be heard.
Right. Well, thank you everybody in chat for joining us. Thank you those who watched the replay, and I want to especially thank Gary as well, but especially thank Stephanie for joining us today and sharing what her platform is about. I think it gives all of us perspective. If you didn't get that, I'm sorry. Hopefully it gave you something though. Hopefully you took away something from this. I always do, and I really appreciate her time. So thank you.
Thank you very much for hosting, Steve. It's been a good time, and I apologize that I have just one frozen frame of my awkward expression there for the duration of this video. I promise I'm smiling through the whole thing.
Right.
Sorry. Thank you so much. I really appreciate being hosted, and thank you everybody for your time.
Okay, thank you. Goodbye, everybody. Peace. Be safe out there. Make money. Earn smart. And check out, if you want to kind of relate one last thing to Stephanie a little bit, check out what David's got going over at Para on driverrights.org. If somebody with a wrench could put that in the chat, driver singular rights.org. That's the 58,000 signatures for transparency. So we're kind of jamming on that. So if you haven't signed up for that, please do. You're given nothing more than your email, as we deserve full transparency. That's all. It's all we're about. So anyway, thank you, Stephanie, and everybody be safe out there.
Bye.